Welcome to Everyday Martial Artist, a weekly podcast where you'll join me, Brian Doucette, as I interview a different martial artist each episode and hear their story. Some guests you may have heard of, and some you probably haven't. Be sure to subscribe where all your favorite podcasts are available. Also visit our website at everydaymartialartist.com. If you're listening for a specific interview, I sure hope you'll stay and check out the other episodes. A very special thank you to Topher Williams for our custom theme music. And now, the newest episode of Everyday Martial Artist. Everyday Martial Artist is brought to you by KOOnline.com for all your martial arts needs. Sparring and safety gear, rank belts, uniforms, weapons, patches, and more. Wholesale supplies made by martial artists for martial artists. Visit us today at ko-online.com. You know, one question I ask every guest on Everyday Martial Artist is about their favorite martial arts book. And there's never been one quite like Martial Theory by Steve Perlman, described as the art of war for the martial arts. Martial Theory helps any martial artist or instructor take their understanding and teaching to the next level. And at martialtheoryU.com, you'll find a global community with instructor groups, Q&A with Steve, live events, and demonstrations to help you apply martial theory directly to your training. It's not just a book, it's a movement. Find Martial Theory on Amazon, and when you join martialtheoryU.com, use discount code EverydayMA for 20% off. That's under $20 a month for life. That's martialtheoryU.com, code EverydayMA. Hello and welcome to Everyday Martial Artist. I'm your host, Brian Doucette, and as we do every week, we're joined by a brand new guest talking about their life and their journey throughout the world of martial arts. My guest today is a lifelong martial artist whose journey began at just 9 years old and hasn't slowed down since. By 17, he was already competing as an adult, quickly rising through the ranks to earn 4 world titles in sport karate. At 20, he joined the legendary Paul Mitchell karate team, one of the most elite teams in the world, and that same year opened his first karate school. Under his guidance, his students went on to capture multiple international championships. He earned his 4th degree black belt in karate and was later inducted into the International Martial Arts Hall of Fame by none other than Chuck Norris himself. Widely regarded as one of the greatest sports karate competitors of all time, his accomplishments speak for themselves, but his story didn't end there. In 2009, he expanded his journey into MMA and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Between 2012 and 2014, he stepped into the cage for 3 professional MMA bouts, winning his final fight by first-round TKO in just 45 seconds at the age of 42. As his jiu-jitsu career progressed, he became a dominant force in the IBJJF circuit. From blue belt onward, he claimed title after title across Texas and continued that momentum at purple, winning both his weight class and the open divisions. In 2017, he earned his brown belt and immediately made history, winning gold at his first Pan Am Championship, then capturing another gold at the Masters Worlds later that same year, and was awarded his black belt on the podium. As a black belt, he continued to excel on the world stage, earning gold in his division, along with a no-gi world bronze and a Pan Am silver. His career spans decades, disciplines, and continents, and his impact on martial arts continues to grow. Please welcome my guest today, Mr. Gabe Reynaga. How you doing today, Gabe?
Good, sir. Very good.
Well, first of all, thank you for your time. I know that you were when I first decided to do this podcast a little over 5 years ago and started making a list of potential guests. You were one of the first ones I thought of.
That's crazy.
I just remember as a young adult, teenager, going down to the Diamond Nationals to watch my friends compete, and that was the first time I saw you and winning that the forms title with that traditional Japanese. I just remember that deep Japanese stance. I'm like, man, that guy's awesome, and I loved watching you compete for a few years, and I'm glad I was able to finally reach you and make this happen. So I'm excited to do this.
Yes, sir. That's really cool. It brings back good memories. The Diamonds and going up to Minnesota was one of my favorite stops in the tour, just because it was just a good vibe up there. It's funny because yesterday actually we had somebody come down. They're going to be here. The husband's a project manager. I met the wife and the son yesterday to our academy. And they're in Wisconsin, but she grew up in the Minneapolis area.
Nice.
So I just had a chance to talk to her a little bit about my memories from being up there. You remember things, right? From like, okay, we're going to Atlanta, and these are the things that I had a good time with. And Minnesota, everyone's just really, really cool up there. So I always look forward to going up to the Diamond Nationals. Very prestigious tournament also.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I for like 9 years, from I think 90 to 99, I don't think I ever missed one. I just went down to watch and stuff like that. And then I got married, started having kids, and I've never been back. But about 5 or 6 years ago, maybe 7 years ago, I was down at a conference for a bank I worked at, and it was in the same hotel. And And I was like,
Wow.
man, it brought back memories. But the funny thing was, like, the day I was leaving, we were checking out of the hotel like 10 a.m. and I saw like 6 kids run past me in uniforms. I'm like, no way, it can't be. And I followed them, and I'm like, yep, it was opening day of the
Sure
Diamond
enough.
Nationals. I'm like, if I would have
Wow.
known that, I would have stayed an extra day. So yeah, that was like, it was just this flush of memories hit me and stuff. Like, man, that was so cool to see again. So, which was part of the thing that led me to, down this podcast. I mean, I technically had the idea for this back in 1997 when I was working in radio. I
Yeah.
tried to do a radio martial arts talk show, and no station I worked at would ever allow it. I think I tried 5 different stations. They all said, it won't work, it won't work, it won't work. And so finally I'm like, I'm just going to do a podcast about 5 years ago, and it's been working well. So
That's awesome.
cool. But as I mentioned in the intro, you started at a very young age. But what I want to know, what we like to do is go back, and I want to know what led to that. Where did that first interest came from? That that first spark that kicked off your martial arts journey.
That's always a interesting question, and being a school owner now, my wife and I just opened up a school a year ago. It's like what got you interested in joining, right? Like what sparked it?
Yep.
And for me, I mean, I was a kid, so my mom was actually the force behind it. She was a Bruce Lee fan.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, no specific reason. Just always thought it was cool. My mom's always into art, and actually, it was my first dojo that I trained at was right next to the place where she would go do her photography. So like old school,
Okay.
right? You went to go get your film developed at
Yep.
a lot of times they'll just go to like wherever the local grocery store or drugstore, but she would go to this photography shop where she'd purchase different kinds of like I think it was 35 millimeter back then, right?
Yep.
You had
Oh
your
yeah.
and you had your different lenses and stuff. So she that was her spot, right? So she would walk by this dojo, and I think at that time they were doing like a 6-month special for like $99, includes
Wow.
a uniform, something crazy like that, right?
Yeah.
And so she's like, okay, well, I'm gonna sign up my son. So we started training. I first. I was 3 months into it, and then she decided to jump into it also.
Really?
And yeah, so
Awesome.
that's really what sparked the interest of me getting into it. I liked it. It's funny, and I tell this story because I teach kids now, so it's like they're, how do you say, their challenges for wanting to do martial arts is different than mine, because back then it was about missing my 2 favorite cartoons was yeah, He-Man and G.I. Joe. I'd give up to
Nice.
go to karate, and I was like, man, this sucks. But it was, it's like any other kid, right? Once you get there, you see your friends, and you start to train and you have fun. But once my mom got into it, my dad got into it also.
Wow.
And then we trained a lot.
Mhm.
My mom and I, we trained almost every day. So we both got our black belts within about like 3 years,
Okay.
just because the amount of training that we did. And my dad never got his black belt. He got up to a certain level. And back then we did Okinawan karate was the
Okay.
style. Ishinru
Nice.
is the name of it. Yeah.
Mhm.
And there was one form that was like a little complicated, a little bit like tricky, because it moved in a diagonal fashion versus a lot of forms are like up and down,
Yep.
side to side. And when he hit this kata, they call it kata.
Mhm.
It was called Chinto was the name of the kata.
Mhm.
He's like, I'm done. I can't get this. So
Oh man.
he hung up his gi, but my
Okay.
mom and I continued forward. And once we got our black belts, we were just like all in. We were helping teach. And at that time, my sensei, or my instructor, he started to kind of fade a little bit. He was kind of getting into like different things, law, and trying to be like involved in like being a paralegal.
Okay.
So he offered to sell the karate school to my mom, and because we were so into it, my mom said, yeah, I'm gonna do it. So
Wow.
I was about 13, and that was my first job, basically, was helping her teach the kids class. And we were like as fully immersed into martial arts as can be. And to put a little bit more, like, we're going to immerse ourselves even more, we like to compete.
Mhm.
And it can get expensive. We were going all up and down California, Nevada, Arizona, and my parents, they said, well, how can we afford this? They did okay for themselves, but
Mhm.
it gets expensive traveling.
Yeah.
Everyone realizes that when they do it. they started selling martial arts equipment. So then we became weekend warriors. We basically, we would run the school during the week. Friday night, we'd start packing up all the martial arts equipment. We'd put them in these like crates, and we'd load them up in our van. Back then the Econoline vans were like the thing,
Mm-hmm.
and we'd load them up, and we'd go to tournaments, and we'd set up our martial arts equipment. So like Saturday we might go to one tournament out in Vegas, Las Vegas, and then Sunday we'd have one back in LA. And that's how our weekends were spent, was just on the road. And it was a great life, right? Because you created your friends on the circuit, like
Yeah.
on the tournaments. And it allowed me to really be involved with it so much that it became part of my, it was our lives.
Yeah.
And it was a great life. It was a great life to be around all these like martial artists, especially like in Los Angeles, because a lot of them were stuntmen. So like some of the guys, do you remember that movie Best of the Best?
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I actually interviewed Simon Rhee.
Simon Rhee. So Simon, his brother Philip,
Yep.
I would see these guys, growing up, and then just, always emulated them. And the same thing growing up. I'm going off on a little bit of tangents, but
That's okay.
this is like kind of like, how we because there's some people that they end up falling off,
Yeah.
that they were, really involved, and then all of a sudden it just like meh. But the other thing when I started karate is that my mom started buying the Black Belt magazines and the Karate Illustrateds,
Okay.
and I pride myself on like wow, I have all these like magazines, because back then it was a cool thing, and we're talking like in the '80s, before internet, and so martial arts magazines were like the thing,
Yeah.
and I had them all. I even had like the Inside Karate. We had all of them, so they were my heroes. Like an example, like Karate Illustrated would promote the sport karate, so like Nasty Anderson, Steve Nasty
Yep.
Anderson, and then on the form side you had George Chung and and
Yep.
and, and John Chung. So I would kind of like idolize these guys. And then what ended up happening on the sport karate scene is that we went from the local circuit, then my parents started liking the national circuit, and the same thing happened. They said, well, how can we afford this? So they connected with, I don't know if you remember back when they had the instructional martial arts videos.
Oh yeah.
Panther Production was one of the first
Yes.
one to come out.
Yep.
So that guy, he was also my same style, Ishin Ryu. And he moved from Buffalo, New York. I remember because he would come and visit my sensei like way back in the day. He decided to move to the city right north of us. I'm in California. I was born and raised in California.
Okay.
My town was Oceanside, and
Oh,
then
nice.
there was this military base right in between us,
Camp Pendleton. Yep.
yep,
Yep.
and San Clemente was right above it. So this guy, Joe Jennings, moved to San Clemente, and my parents, they said, they started working together with him. And right about that time, like Bill Wallace started doing the instructional videos and all these other, well-known martial artists. So my parents started to go out on the road selling those at Diamond Nationals, at the U.S. Open. I
Mm-hmm.
went with them a little bit, but then I just was around, that national scene was like, oh man, I'm like 14, 15. I want to do this,
Mm-hmm.
and just continued on. And little by little, I started to get an opportunity to compete against those people that I grew up watching,
Wow.
and in the movie, I'm sorry, in the magazines, and
Mm-hmm.
then there were a couple of like sport karate videos that came out during the day, and it was just a great life, a great martial arts upbringing, as you can call it.
Yeah. So you mentioned now your instructor kind of stepped away and sold the school to your mom. So did you guys have to find a new instructor to continue your training?
So yeah, that's a good question. We did, and we kind of were like a little bit on that, like there were a couple of black belts that were still there at the school, but you kind of like felt like, I don't want to say equals, but like, you always want to continue to grow your
Yeah.
martial arts, right? So you need to have a sensei. So it's funny because we were in this dojo that we purchased from our instructor, and down the way on that same block there was a movie theater, and it was vacant. It was one
Mm-hmm.
of those old school movie theaters where they just had one theater,
Yep.
right? Like it wasn't like the multiplex that
Yeah.
were these are like old, like, maybe from the 40s, 50s. They
Mm.
used to have, they had two on our block. My mom had this vision. She's like, man, it would be so cool to move our dojo into this academy, or like into this theater. And it just seemed so like that's a big, commitment.
Mm-hmm.
But we made it happen. My mom was always a visionary, and she built a dojo out of this movie theater. It was awesome. It was like one of the biggest schools around, and we were just super excited back then.
Mm-hmm.
And right about that time, we had this Okinawan gentleman that moved 2 cities from us. He moved his world headquarters. I was 15, and he moved it right there into our area. And we found out, and we're like, wow, what an opportunity to train. He was an eighth dan back then,
Wow.
and his name was Morio Higaona. And he had his, so when we started training with him, he had two guys that basically moved to California. One was from Israel, another one was from England. And then throughout my time training with Sensei Higaona, he brought, people from South Africa, from Okinawa, Japan, Australia, New Zealand. We actually ended up having a guy from New Zealand being our sensei at our school. So it was like, it was really cool to, like, you asked the question, well, like, so you took over the dojo, who was your sensei? And we went through a couple years of, like, I was 13, so we were 13, 14, 15. I was like, oh, we trained ourselves, and we did that. But having that opportunity to go under, a world-renowned sensei like that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's really cool. Wow. Yeah, I recognized that name, so I had to Google him. So yeah, that's.
Oh, he was legit.
Yeah.
That old, or that group BBC, they did a really cool documentary on him, and he was definitely, it was a little bit like I was Daniel-san and he was Mr. Miyagi, because he would, back then I was 15. I remember because I got my license at 16, and he would invite me to his house, and he's like, come train. So we switched our style. We grew up doing Ishinru, which
Mm-hmm.
was one of the styles from Okinawa, and he was Goju-ryu, which was,
Okay.
Ishinru was made of both of the main styles in Okinawa, Goju-ryu and Shorin-ryu.
Mm-hmm.
And he was Goju-ryu. So we changed our style, very similar. There was a few of the forms that were the same. But in his style of karate, they were big on supplemental training, which is like the punching board, the makawara.
Yep.
And so they're big on that. They had some different kind of like, how do you say, almost like dumbbells, but they're a little different. There's all these like little different training. There was some grip training with like these like lead, heavy weights. And he had it set up in his garage. So he's like, Gabe, come over and do some training with me in the morning. What I was mentioning to you with Hagona is the opportunity to go to his house, and he had a whole supplemental martial arts set up in his garage, and we would do these specific weight training that were designed from his style, the Bakawara board, some of these weights that they had for like grip training. It was really cool.
That's awesome. Talk about just a fun childhood. I mean, that's. Like me, I just compare it to myself when I hear stories of it, because like I grew up in a town that had one martial arts school.
Crazy.
Yeah, and I mean they did some competition, but I wasn't really into it and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean even now, I think my hometown back then, I think they still only have one school. Where the place I live now, I'm across the river from Fargo, North Dakota. And there's probably 30 plus schools within a 20-mile radius. So
yeah, it's grown a lot. Back when you had your training at your one,
mm-hmm.
what was it? In the town, there was only one school.
Yeah.
What type of martial arts?
That was my first style, was Tung Sudo. I started that in June of '84, 3 days after watching The Karate Kid. So they were actually the instructor and his assistant were standing out in the lobby of the movie theater handing out free passes. So,
that's wild.
Yeah. So
that's really cool.
That's what kind of started it for me. Then I switched to Shotokan. I did Shotokan when I was in high school. And then in college, I got into Aikido and traditional Taekwondo. And then I moved to California in 96, 97 to study American Kempo. And then throughout that, I've dabbled in, I've done boxing, I've done grappling, I've done some judo, I've done some Hapkido, I've done some weapons weapons training. So, but my core system is traditional Taekwondo. I've been with my current instructor for over 30 years.
That's awesome. When you say traditional Taekwondo, so it's not the WTF?
So they do the WTF when they do for sparring, but it's still like my instructor's instructor, who's a 10th degree. He's retired now, but he was like a Korean Tiger Rock in the Korean War. So it's the stuff that, like, that's why I hate people who judge Taekwondo based only by like seeing it on the Olympics. No, this stuff actually does work for self-defense. It's legit.
But it's almost like, it sounds like, because I grew up in Camp Pendleton, they would talk about Rock Marines, right?
Yep.
And so his stuff that he developed had to be very like battlefield ready type of like, got it.
And we heard stories about some of the stuff when he was younger, fighting off a gang from his village in Korea and stuff. And so we heard some of the stories, like, and I obviously, too, just especially running a school, just how different classes are compared to back then. I mean, like I've said this many times. My instructor has told me that if he taught now like he did in the 90s, he'd only have about 4.
He wouldn't have any students.
Well, he said he'd probably have 4 or 5 dedicated students. But he said if I taught like my instructor did in the 70s and 80s, I'd be in jail.
There was nobody can get away with what they were able to do back then.
Yeah, we had so many stories of his instructor. If a kid wasn't standing up straight in class, he'd get smacked upside the head or something. It's like, wow. So but I mean, luckily I found my good instructor, because I've also told many people my first Taekwondo instructor I trained with for about a year and a half was my John Kreese. You talked about I basically started with John Kreese and I found my Mr. Miyagi. It's kind of how I tell people that guy drove me to hate martial arts, and I almost quit completely. He was just
your first instructor?
My first Taekwondo instructor.
Instructor. I got you.
Yeah, no, my Tong Soo instructor. My Tong Soo instructor and my Shotokan instructor were both awesome. They were actually one of the first guests on my show. But that first Taekwondo instructor was he was a dick. All he cared about was competition. All he cared about was winning. He didn't care if students got hurt.
Win at all costs.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
you said you went out to California. I know that you said the interview is not about you, but I always find it interesting. American Kempo.
Yes.
Was it in LA that you did that?
So I moved to, I lived in Hesperia.
Yep.
Because Jeff Speakman at the time had a school in Victorville.
Yep.
And then when, shortly after I got there, he ended up moving his school, and I trained with one of his students, Jim Diggs. And I also did some training with Larry Tatum and stuff. And
that's really cool.
But but then I my full-time job, I worked in La Habra, so I commuted 65 miles a day. And back then I loved it, man, because no cell phones, good radio. I used to listen to Mark and Brian in the morning in 95.5 KLOS.
Wow.
Going into work every morning. And one of my best friends actually was stationed at Pendleton, so I went to Oceanside many times.
Okay. Yeah.
And actually, one of my best friends from high school grew up in Oceanside and transferred to Minnesota. I think he moved there, what about our sophomore year? I think our junior year, so like 91 or 92.
Crazy.
But he was one of my best friends in high school, and he grew up in Oceanside. So
from Oceanside to Minnesota, that's a big change right there.
Yeah, I remember our first snow, man. I took him out for a joyride in the empty parking lot, spinning around in the snow and ice, and he loved it.
Wow, this is crazy.
That's good times. Yeah, definitely. So do you remember that you talked about, the tournaments? Do you remember your first big tournament, the Diamond Nationals, Battle of Atlanta, your first big one you competed in?
Yeah, it was U.S. Open.
Okay.
But it was like when I was a kid, I was like maybe 88. And I remember just like the bigness of the tournament was like, it was a little overwhelming to where you just like, so what's going on here, and it was kids from everywhere too. So it was a little bit of a culture shock, hearing these kids from New York talking all crazy, and because I was just used to like laid back California, and and there was kids from the South, so they were talking with their Southern slang or their Southern drawl, and I was like, this is crazy, and I didn't do very well, I think, because there was a few years when I struggled a lot because I was undersized for my age. And just was getting beat a lot, both in fighting and forms, and so it was a good rough patch because it really like built some like metal, or like how do you say, like just having to like persevere through that
Yeah.
rough patch to where everything started clicking about like 16, 17, primed up to the year I turned 17. I'm going like, to all the majors as a adult competing, even though I was 17 and doing really well. But that happened, I feel, because of the struggles that I went through. But I remember going to, it was back then, now it's in Orlando, but back then it was in Daytona Beach.
Okay.
And I remember, Daytona Beach being super cool because you could like drive on the sand. We couldn't do that in California. And yeah, so I remember going there with my parents. And then I remember the final show with like Steve Anderson was fighting in there and a couple of the other big names. Jean Fournette was the forms competitor.
I remember that name. Yep.
Remember that? Yeah, he was from Quebec, and he was amazing, like semi-traditional form, but he would do like these amazing like high kicks. And so yeah, I remember that was my first big national tournament, the U.S. Open.
Nice. When do you remember when you decided to step away from the sport karate competition, and kind of what led to that decision?
It was kind of forced. It wasn't like choice because I was at that time when I started. The Diamond Nationals belongs to it's part of the back then, and I think they've changed the name, but it's called the NASCA circuit, North American Sport Karate Association. Yep. So I would, when I got on the Paul Mitchell team, I think it was 20, 21. I don't remember now. It was so long ago. But, I was already traveling before then, but then obviously it was that much easier because you were sponsored, no money out of pocket.
Yeah.
And then at that time, I was representing Asian World of Martial Arts. They did like this amazing like catalog pictures of myself, my buddy Larry Lamb, which was one of the Ninja Turtle costume guys. He was in the first or second Ninja Turtle movie. He played, inside the costumes as a stuntman.
Yep.
And then the other guy that was in there was Rich Brandon, which was one of the Power Ranger.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was an amazing guy. He was a stuntman for Power Rangers. So these two guys and myself, we had this, the money wasn't great, but the exposure was amazing. And when I say money wasn't great, it's because, you get the opportunity to just like be part of that. It's like, it makes sense. So we had these pictures, taken of us and and they did a great job. They had a photographer come out and they used these pictures everywhere in their catalogs and in their advertisements. The edition that Brandon Lee came out on, I think it's Brandon Lee, this is Bruce Lee's son when he died. I was on the back cover of that in the Asian world, and it was like the exposure, right? So like I'm competing in like 94, 95. But I remember now that I say my dates, in 93 I tore my ACL. Ooh. I was at a tournament in Boston and I threw a spinning back kick and my knee blew out. Boom.
Dang.
And so I had surgery on it. I came back in 94 and I blew my other knee training. Yeah, I was taking somebody down and then my knee just went down on my knee and it popped. And sure enough, I tore my other ACL.
Wow.
So that was kind of like the end of my sport karate career. I was a young kid and, I was running a martial arts school and, it just everything was kind of like not going so great. But I remember, say, like 94, 95, kind of still, before I tore my second one, I was doing the Asian World thing, and then Macho started, remember Macho's the sport karate gear, like the gloves. So they approached me, and they're like, we're starting this thing called Team Macho, and Rich is going to do it, Rich Brandon, Larry Lamb's going to do it, Christine Bannon, which was another one of my teammates, and Herb Perez, which was a Olympic Taekwondo medalist. And the four of y'all are going to be Team Macho. So more exposure, and it was like, I would go to these tournaments towards the end of my sport karate career. I remember this because it was like, oh man, that must have been rough. And I would be ready to compete. And, there was quite a bit of like buzz just because, like they see you everywhere, like in these magazines and stuff. So, you get a lot of like notoriety. And right before my competition, these judges are coming up to me that are going to judge me and my fellow competitors. And they're asking me for my autographs and pictures. And I can be like, oh my gosh. And like, I imagine like, what are my competitors thinking? Like, like the judges are asking me for my autograph. And I was like, this is going to be a rough day for these guys. But it was just, it's these memories. And then like around that time also, there was a guy that he trained another traditional style, but he'd come in and train with us back in the day. And I knew him ever since I was a kid, and we stayed in touch. And we had unique conversations. And I remember this guy because he would ask me things that would kind of like really make me think about martial arts. Just, I don't know if it would be from a technique or
Mhm.
like, what's your perspective? Do you think that doing sport karate is going to water down your traditional forms or whatever it is? Right? He really like, made me think. So I always remember the guy. And he's like, Gabe, I went to Paris. This was around that same time that whole like, macho and Asian world. And I'm in Paris and I'm walking through and I'm like, oh, let me stop at this shop and check out these magazines. And there's this magazine from France. And he opens it up, karate magazine. He's like, holy shit, Gabe's in here, like because I was a macho. And that's was just a pretty cool thing from having to get out of sport martial arts, but definitely, and in my opinion, I felt like I had a great journey in that
Yeah.
that time. It was like the heyday, I guess you can say, of my sport karate career, is the notoriety and recognition that I received, and the competition. Like,
Yeah.
people still, not so much anymore, but I went back to it. I think 2000, before I moved here to Texas, like 2003,
Okay.
2004. One of my old sport karate guys, he was always like, Gabe, when you come back, he had that East Coast accent. He was from Connecticut. Come on, Gabe, you got to come back. When are you gonna do? You need that form for me. I'm like, okay, all right. Well, timing's right. Let's do it. So I went back to sport karate years after, 10 plus years after I left it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really cool. People would come up to me and say, man, I remember, like you said, I
Yeah.
remember you competing on the final stage at Diamond Nationals. I remember how, the audience was so into it. And it was just a cool chance to kind of go back and get a little taste of it 10 years after.
That's awesome. I guarantee somewhere in a box, I probably still have your autograph on a magazine or one of the promotional pictures from like Team Paul Mitchell or something. So I know I have autographs from like you and Herb Perez. I know I have Christine's, I Carmichael Simon and all these, Larry Lamb. I have a lot of those autographs. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, it was a fun time. It
Yeah.
definitely was, and great memories of just being around that, and then transitioning to a different world. How I ended up getting involved in MMA and
Yeah.
and
So what
and
led to that? Kind of was that something you were seeking out, or kind of how did that happen?
it kind of fell into it. So I moved to Texas in 2005,
Mm-hmm.
and I was a single dad. My son was like in fifth grade at the time. I focused a couple years in just kind of getting settled into, here and the job and just making sure my son was good because it was just him and I. My mom moved here in 2007, so I moved her out here, so she kind of helped me to like kind of help with my son, and
Mm-hmm.
and then by 2009 I'm like, okay, I wanted to start training again, and to be honest with you, I actually was going to start boxing at a gym,
Oh.
at a boxing gym, because I had spent a little time boxing when I was about 18, 19. We had a coach that actually brought his like little boxing team into my mom's karate school. So I did an amateur boxing fight. So that's a funny story in itself, but I won it, but it was definitely not pretty. But I enjoyed how do you say, like the different like stations of boxing. You warm up in shadow box,
Yep.
you jump rope, you hit the heavy bag, you hit the speed bag. It was just a great workout. So I was like, I went to this boxing gym here in town, old school boxing gym, typical, like, you look at the $1 Million Baby, how the gym's not that pretty of a place, and it's a little rough, but
Yep.
that's the grittiness of boxing. And right about that time, we had this new employee that started. I was doing recruiting, like headhunting, and he's like, hey, my buddy just opened up, however we got to talking, he's like, my buddy just opened up an MMA gym. And I remember, because he's like, and the question I asked, because I already had the boxing gym in my mind, does it have a heavy bag? And he goes, no, because heavy bags don't hit back. And I'm like, okay, all right, I'll go check it out. Because I had already tried another jiu-jitsu school just to kind of see what it was about, because it was interesting to me, Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I had a chance to do it in the 90s, but I was typical martial artist, young ego kid, like, I don't want to do that jiu-jitsu stuff, man. I'm the big dog in this sport karate thing, I'm gonna go over there and look stupid, it's dumb mentality, right? Imagine if I started in the 90s like some of these guys.
Yeah.
And so I tried this jiu-jitsu class. I really liked it, but it was pricey. I was like, oh man, single parent, I don't know if I can afford that. and I went to go check out my buddy's friend's gym, and the price was right. It was very close to what I was going to pay in boxing. So I'm like, forget it. I'm gonna do this. And the guy was really nice, the guy who was the instructor. And then I just started to get immersed in it. So he offered kickboxing or Muay Thai, and he offered jiu-jitsu. So you always go with where you're more comfortable with, right?
Yeah.
Because being a striker, I was like, oh well, man, I'm gonna start throwing these strikes, and I did really well because I had those kicks, and I enjoyed that part of it. I did the jujitsu because it was there, but it was hard. It was not very I didn't take to it. It wasn't like other guys would be like, oh yeah, you just do this and you move there and you do this, and I was like, whoa, step one, it didn't click for me very well at all.
Yeah.
Jujitsu. But I did it, and then maybe 6 months after I joined, one of his buddies came in and started teaching for him. My instructor would teach Monday, Wednesday, and then his buddy would teach Tuesday and Thursday. And his buddy was an MMA fighter, and so he liked training with me because I would challenge him with my striking. But as soon as it went to the ground, it was over. But he was like, "Yeah, Gabe, let's do some training, man. Let's get." So we beat the crap out of each other every night, and it was great. Right? I was like, "Wow, this is great. This is great." So he's like, "Hey, why don't you come to my next fight?" So I remember going to his first fight, and the whole MMA world's like kind of its own thing, right? It's like, oh man, these guys are all like a bunch of badasses, and they're all looking like they're ready to like go after it, and it was definitely an intense environment, but I dug it, and little by little I started to like go more and more and more until about, I think it was 2011. That guy left our place, but we had a new coach come in, and he's like, "Gabe, let's get you a fight." I'm like, "Forget it, like no, I forget it, but let's do it. I'm here every day. I'm punching everybody in the face. Let's do it." And at that time, I was 40.
Okay.
So obviously, it was like, "Man, what are you doing, dude? You're 40 years old." But I enjoyed it, so I got out there, and I was feeling good, everything great. I got knocked out. Boom.
Ooh.
Like the fight's on YouTube, so if you ever want to watch me get knocked out, this is there. I'm handling my business and I'm doing well, but I didn't had that moment to just like finish it. But I was like, they're gonna stop the fight here. I'm just like I'm just like hitting this guy. He did a good job of playing possum. He kind of like leaned back and came forward and knocked me out. Boom, with a punch.
Dang.
Hit me so hard that my mouthpiece went through my lip. So I had like a hole in my lip. Right, yeah. Because those MMA gloves, they're no joke. And then when you wrap your hand in the hand wrap on top of that, it's like a little cement block.
Yeah.
And so when you hit somebody, you knock the crap out of them. And so that was my first fight. My second fight, I should have listened to my coach. He's like, "Gabe, don't rush it. Take your time." "Oh no, I gotta defend my honor." Okay. So they matched me up for my second fight against this. And the other thing too is it was supposed to be, my first fight was supposed to be amateur. It was the show that I did was going to be a amateur and professional show.
Yep.
Well, they ended up nixing the amateur part of it, so all that was left was pro. And my coaches were like, "Gabe, you just do it, because pros aren't that like much." And the guy I fought, maybe he had like 4 fights, so he had some experience, but those are amateur and pros, right? So that's was my first fight, pro fight. No biggie, it is what it is. And I felt like I could have won it, but here nor there.
Yeah.
So the second fight, I think the guy had maybe like 4 or 5 amateur fights, and then he had like 2 or 3 pro fights. This is my second pro fight. Never had any amateurs. And he was from East Texas, good striker, but even better jiu-jitsu. He beat the crap out of me for 3 rounds. It was a rough fight, man. He got my back. He was punching me. He was elbowing me. And I was surviving, but just was like in deep water. Had a moment, I used to have my move in jiu-jitsu that I would go for. They called it the Reynaga because I always attacked it. When somebody tried to go after my back, I would look for a straight arm bar from the back. And I almost had it one time, but that was a rough match. It was like, man, getting my ass kicked for 3 rounds. I lose the fight, and now I listen to my coach. I said, "Hey, okay, coach, whatever you say. Let's just take a year. Let's just train. Let's not even worry about your next fight." I was, 41 at the time. Okay, I'm gonna trust you, coach. So I just trained, didn't really think too much about it, enjoyed my training, and just my dedication at that time was 4 days a week, 3 hours a day. I'd get off work, I'd go to the gym, I'd do an hour of jiu-jitsu, an hour of wrestling, and then an hour of striking.
Wow.
I was just all into it. And then a year later, I got the phone call, and they're like, it was my coach with a promoter, and they're driving together. And they're like, "Gabe, you want to fight?" And I'm like, "Let's do it." And that was my journey
Final fight.
I did that final fight. I was 42 years old. I got my win, and I'm like, I'm walking away from this.
Yeah, go out on top, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, with the win.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted, and then that led me to. I was a blue belt at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and I said, okay, well, I like this jujitsu stuff. I'm getting better at it. Let me pursue the bigger tournaments. And coming out of MMA, I had a leg up on my competition because I was like in MMA shape
Yeah.
compared to I'm 42. So my other 42-year-old competitors, because when we compete at these IBJJF, it's like the standard for
Yeah.
the jiu-jitsu. When I compete at these events, I mean, these guys are other like, working professionals, they do it for like hobby and fun. And I'm over here like, "Arr, I just got out of the cage. Let me rip arms apart, And so I had a leg up on these guys. Blue belt dominated, purple belt, I did really well. Started getting more difficult though, because these guys are pretty good, but
Yeah.
it was definitely a fun time coming up through the ranks.
That is awesome. And talk about, you said you just opened a new school about a year ago?
We did, yeah. So my wife and I,
Mm-hmm.
we decided to open up our own school. I had worked for a group for 10 years,
Mm-hmm.
and they had a huge operation. They still do. And my wife was running her own wrestling club out of another gym. And that gym was closing, so we were just kind of in a tough spot. She had probably like 40 wrestlers between elementary kids, middle school, and high school, and she had no place to take them. So we said, let's do it. Let's get this going, and it's been going great. Both my wife and I. She's a black belt. She's a better badass than I am. She's an 8-time world champion.
Nice.
Yeah. So she and I, we run the jiu-jitsu together, and then she's in charge of her wrestling. I
Okay.
help her out with her kids' wrestling, but it's a great combination. She had 9 of her seniors last year from high school go on to wrestle in college.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's pretty special. I think
Okay.
we're doing a great thing, and my focus for the new year is develop some world champions in jiu-jitsu, and I plan on having at least 2 or 3 this year, by the time, because so we have the adult world championship for jiu-jitsu in May,
Mm-hmm.
and then the everybody above 30 is called the Masters, and that tournament's going to happen in the middle of August. So my plan is to take probably 6 of our competitors out there and come back with a couple of world titles.
Nice. And that the school, that's Takedown City Wrestling and Jiu-Jitsu Academy?
That's right, Takedown City.
Nice. I will definitely add a link to that when the episode comes out. That's cool. Congrats on that.
Yeah.
Looks like a cool place, man. Looking at the website.
Yeah, no, we a friend of ours he's kind of like we work together. He has a wrestling school in the Valley, and we're partners, and we collaborate a lot together. And he had them in his school, and they're starting to become more popular. Those lights on the ceiling.
Yeah.
And so we're like, man, we better get these lights up, so that way we're the first one in San Antonio to have them, and it has a nice little feature to it, right? It's just like makes it for a cool environment. And yeah, we've been very blessed. Like so much of our students have come from word of mouth, and my wife is starting to become like the go-to place when it comes to wrestling. Wrestling here in Texas is not like it is up there where y'all are at.
Yeah.
Up in Minnesota, Wisconsin. I mean,
Iowa.
Iowa, Texas. I'm sorry. Wrestling's really big, but we're growing. Our people are doing really well, and competing at big tournaments. And between wrestling and jiu-jitsu, we definitely have a full. We're nonstop.
That's good though. So over your martial arts career, over your whole life, is there one philosophy that is just super important to you? It's at the top of your list.
Philosophy, I would say, just commitment to excellence. That's a Raider thing, but
Yeah.
I grew up in San Diego, so I'm a Charger fan. But I know that the Raiders talk about commitment to excellence is being good at even the small things, because we can overlook those small details. And, when you're kind of like breezing through, when I tell like my students, even a push-up, do it to your best, because that just leads to the next thing, and how you practice your moves in the academy is always to how you're going to compete.
Mm-hmm.
So just being committed to being excellent in the small stuff, the commitment to excellence. And that's worked good for me.
Yeah.
Like the details. and really putting a lot of effort into your practice.
Okay, nice. So do you remember your first student ever, whether it's karate, whether it's jujitsu, but your first student ever that you brought from white to black?
Yes, yeah, I took white belts in karate
Mm-hmm.
because I look at my students when my mom had the karate school. We actually we did probably promote a couple of people, but I was like 15,
Yeah.
so it was like was more focused on me. And then when I opened up my own karate school in California, I remember these kids actually came from my mom's school, so they were like my first like junior black belts.
Okay.
And so it was cool to see them, go through that whole journey and receiving their junior black belts.
And do you keep in contact with any of them? Any of them still training and competing?
For the most part, like one of my students, when I closed my karate school, I ended up saying, hey, I have like, maybe like 40, 50 students. Why don't you keep teaching these guys? And he's still actively teaching martial arts out there in California.
Awesome.
He splits his time a little bit between Mexico and California,
Mm-hmm.
but he continued on, and it was good seeing him keep up with it. I keep up with a few of my old students from on Facebook. It's a good way to kind of keep up on them.
Yep.
But the new chapter, this next one, is definitely going to be memorable because seeing somebody come up and through jujitsu is a little different, right? You get a black belt in like traditional karate, taekwondo, like 3-4 years, sometimes 5
Yeah.
to get a black belt. But in jujitsu, it's 8 to 12 years.
Yeah.
So the journey's a little longer, and you just, the grind of jujitsu, it's definitely different. And so like seeing, my adults, I enjoy the kids too, but I'm a little older now, right? So like that enjoyment of seeing an adult who everyone comes to training martial arts for different reasons.
Right.
Self-defense. They are a fan of the UFC and they want to do it, but they don't want to get punched in the face. So jiu-jitsu is a good alternative. It's like you're still doing part of it, but you're not really doing like the punching in the face thing.
Yeah.
So seeing these people, in fact, I just had two ladies compete for their first time in jiu-jitsu last Sunday.
Okay.
And one of them was someone that you never thought would want to compete because she's so like delicate, right? She's like,
Yep.
you got to start being a little tougher, not tougher, but like meaner, you got to start like controlling your partner. You're too nice. You're too nice. And little by little, in March, it'll be 1 year. And little by little, she started to like get more like physical. And for her to see her go out there and like dominate her opponent, it was really impressive. And, she ended up winning the tournament for her division.
That's awesome.
And that's, to me, that's so rewarding to see somebody go from you like, oh man, it's going to be difficult for this person to like progress in jiu-jitsu, to seeing them like start clicking for them, and like them being able to pull off a technique or control their opponent. It's so much different. It's like the rewarding factor of it. Striking, I always will have a place for that in my heart because that's what I grew up doing.
Yeah.
But on the grappling side, struggling with grappling myself and then seeing people progress in it now there's not much more reward in my opinion than that. But that's from a grappler's bias perspective.
Yeah, I like it. That's good. So I have a few fun questions we use to wrap up the interview. I'm curious now, when you were fighting, what was your MMA walk-up music?
That's good. So I only did it 3 times, right?
Yep.
But you remember, like, that's so much of your thoughts are like, oh, what am I going to walk out to? The first one was at that time, I don't even know the name of the music because it's funny you said that, but it's like the name of the artist was Skrillex.
Okay.
And it was, can't even remember the genre of type of music now because it was that long ago. It's however long ago.
Mm-hmm.
But my second walkout song was the same group that did what's the movie with DiCaprio and help me out there. There's a gangster movie with the gangster from Boston, South Boston. Jack Nicholson was him. He played Whitey.
The Departed.
The Departed.
Yes.
So the opening scene when that music kicks off and it's kind of like Irish music.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say they were I can't remember it now, but I came out to one of their songs for my second fight.
Nice.
To honor my coach.
Okay.
Because my coach was like Irish guy, right? Irish American. And then honestly, I think my final 2, I take that back. So my second fight, I fought in the Rio Grande Valley for my second and third fights.
Mm-hmm.
So to kind of like play to the crowd, I came out in like this Mexican music, because I'm 100% Mexican, but
Yeah.
I don't speak that. So, but anyway, so I came out to this Mexican music, like this cowboy Mexican music, and like played to the crowd. It was fun for the second fight, and then the third fight was that Irish music. So that
Okay.
was my walkout songs.
So if you had to pick a new one today, what song do you think you'd go with one of those, or would you pick a new one?
So now I've competed as a black belt, and I've done two super fights because
Okay.
it's a thing now, right? For jiu-jitsu is similar to like an MMA show. You have an opponent, and you go and you try to submit them in your time. That's all you're looking for is a submission. You're not scoring points.
Yeah.
They call them super fights. So I've done two, and both times I've come out to the Japanese war drums.
Okay.
That Japanese war drums is how do you say, gets me fired up. I
Yeah.
don't know if you've ever heard of it before, but
Oh,
the
yeah.
big old taiko drums.
Yep, that's cool. All right, who are 3, 4, 5 names you'd put on your personal Mount Rushmore of martial arts?
Mount Rushmore of martial arts. I would say Bruce Lee.
Okay.
I would say my sensei, Morio Higona.
Nice.
Yeah, I would say him. I would say, so the Gracies have a unique story,
Yeah.
but there are some other Brazilians that didn't get the same recognition just because the Gracies were like the figureheads.
Yeah.
Some of those original Brazilians that helped create Brazilian. You see that the Gracies have their own story, but then there's the other story of these other professors, which I knew a couple of their names, but it's been a little bit a while.
Yeah.
But they, for their efforts, I would put them on the top of my list. So those would probably be my big three.
Okay.
Yeah, that would probably be my.
I like it. All right. How about a favorite martial arts book?
Favorite martial arts book. The one that I probably got most of my ideas was my own sensei's. Higona has some really great books that they put together.
Really?
Okay. Yeah, he has some really good instructional and also some philosophy in his books. That was a great read for me.
Okay, I'll have to check that one out. So, all right. Now this one, we're close to the same age, so I'm thinking you might have a good answer for this one. But do you have a favorite martial arts video game? Did you get into gaming when you were younger?
So I was definitely a video game fanatic.
Nice.
We're talking old school, going to the arcade type of thing.
Heck yeah.
And so the one it's a kung fu game where you kind of go through the different levels.
Yep, I remember that one actually.
That one was like one of my favorites, and even Karate Champ. I don't know if you remember that one, but
I loved
Karate Champ was pretty awesome because you had to like work the joysticks in a certain way to get your moves that you needed. I think they had 2 joysticks.
Yeah. You can play that. You can actually, if you search, you can play that online. Actually, you can find there's awesome. A website that has Karate Champ. It's kind of fun. Nice. Yeah. All right. How about a favorite martial arts TV show?
TV show. So Walker, Texas Ranger. I never really watched it, right?
Yeah.
But my son did, and my son would watch it with his grandpa.
Nice.
And when I guess I took my son over like 2001, 2002. This guy promotes these like roasts in the Karate Hall of Fame. Mm-hmm. He's actually out of here in Houston. His name is Gary Lee.
Okay.
And he said, Gabe, I want you to do your demonstration, your kata demonstration at a Bob Wall's roast.
Nice.
And you remember Bob Wall was...
Oh, yeah.
Bob Wall. So, Enter the Dragon, good friend of Bruce Lee. So I'm like, yeah, let's do it. It was up in Burbank. My son's grandparents lived in that valley area around Burbank. So I take my son, and I would take him to go spend time with his grandparents, his mom's parents. And then I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to take him to this roast. I'm pretty sure Chuck's going to be there, Chuck Norris, because, Bob Wall's one of his buddies. And sure enough, he was there. And my son runs up to me, Texas Walker Ranger. Oh, my gosh. He was so excited. It was cool. And I had met Chuck, and like he inducted me into the one of the Karate Hall of Fames way back in the 90s. And he still recognized me. It was really cool. So that was a good memory.
That's awesome. All right. How about a favorite martial arts movie?
Favorite martial arts movie? Well, Karate Kid was classic, right?
Yes.
Like that inspired you to start martial arts. But I was a big ninja fan back in the day. I grew up. I had every ninja paraphernalia you can consider. I don't know if that's the wrong word, but I had the blow guns. I had the claws that you can climb the walls with. That's right. I had the ninja sword with all the special weapons in it. I was just like a fanatic, because my parents had a martial arts supply company, so I
Yeah.
had access to all that stuff, the ninja stars, and I had all that. So watching like Enter the Ninja, the Shokasugi,
Yeah.
that's an old name, but he had his own like Revenge of the Ninja. Those were like, being a kid, those were like, oh man, this is amazing,
Yep.
and those were the movies that I remember. Were the American Ninja. That was another
I
one.
love that one. Michael Dudikoff. And Shokasugi was in the
Yes.
TV series The Master too.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, The Master, huh? I never knew that. That was that. When did that come out?
That was early 80s. That was with Lee Van Cleef starred in it,
Okay.
and Timothy Van Patten. Lee Van Cleef was like the first American ninja, and he was like traveling around the U.S. in this van and met up with this young kid and started training him and stuff. But Shokasugi was the bad guy. I think it was one season. I actually have the pilot episode on the DVD I found in the $5 bin at Walmart like 10 years ago. Demi Moore was in the pilot episode. So
that's wild. The Master, huh?
The
I'll have to
Master,
check that
yeah.
out.
Yeah, it was on probably right around the same time as Sidekicks with Ernie Reyes Jr. They were both around that same time, I think. So yeah, if you to go online and look it up, you'll get a kick out. It's kind of cheesy, but it's fun. So, all right, final question. Now this one doesn't have to be a martial arts movie. Any movie you've seen in your whole life, a favorite movie fight scene. So there's one fight scene that jumps out.
You have these questions that really get you thinking. Favorite fight scene. So everyone remembers the Kung Fu Theater. Take that back.
Yeah.
Not everybody, but people like us remember Kung Fu Theater.
Heck yeah.
And they had a movie that was my favorite for a long time, and it was called Challenge of the Ninja. And it was about a husband, wife. She was Japanese and he was Chinese. And they started talking about martial arts, and they were getting insulted because each one of them thought that their martial art was better. My karate is better than your kung fu. No, my kung fu is better. And they started fighting and having this disagreement. She ends up writing her sensei that her husband thinks that kung fu is better than their karate. He brings his whole team over to China to kick this guy's ass. And one by one, he goes through each one of them. But the final fight is the master. And they had this badass fight. And the master was a ninja too. So he was doing like this little like crab style. I remember it was like a side to side movement.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually, being the silly kid that I was back in the day in karate and sport karate, I did my little crab walks with my commas. I I put it in my form, and I was like, because I remember those fight scenes, I was like, man, they went after it, and it was, all the little attacks that final boss did to the guy. It was great. It was great. Challenge of the Ninja.
That's awesome. I love it. Well, Gabe, before I let you go, is there anything last minute that we forgot to mention, I forgot to ask you about, or just last minute parting words you want to get out there before we wrap it up?
Honestly, it was a great conversation. Brought back some really good memories. As the journey through the martial arts has been, something that I cherish, and makes me want to reach out to some of the old friends that I haven't talked to in years.
That's good.
Larry Lamb and I, we still connect every, like I'll probably call him for Christmas, and he'll call me for New Year, or and there's other people, like I said, my old teammate from the Paul Mitchell team. We talk every couple years, and it's like I'm sitting here right here in my living room, and I don't have I left a lot of my trophies back in California, but I have this when I went back to the circuit. I have my Diamond Nationals trophy that I got when I went to, remember I told you I came back to sport karate. Yeah, I have it right here in my living room. It's funny because I don't have any other karate trophies or anything like that, but I have this one Diamond Nationals plaque here.
That's awesome.
So just the memories,
Yeah.
The journey has been fun, and I've got some really cool memories. So thank you for the conversation. It's been fun.
Hey, thank you. Seriously, man. I truly enjoyed this. Love chatting with you and hearing your story. And I think my listeners are going to enjoy it.
That's awesome. Really appreciate it, sir. You have a great weekend, and happy holidays to you and your family.
Wrap up today's episode by taking your own training to the next level with Martial Theory by Steve Perlman, the book that's redefining martial arts thinking. Find Martial Theory on Amazon today. Join the worldwide movement at martialtheoryu.com, where you'll find Q&A sessions, live events, and direct guidance from Steve himself. Use code EverydayMA for 20% off for life. That's martialtheoryu.com, code EverydayMA. Thanks for listening to Everyday Martial Artist. We hope you will join us every week for a brand new episode with a different martial artist telling their story. If you enjoy the show, be sure to leave us a review. Also, be sure to check out our website at everydaymartialartist.com. There you can find all of our episodes and contact us to suggest guests and ask questions. Again, thanks for listening to Everyday Martial Artist, and we'll see you next week.